I'm with David Nekrutman, and we're talking about the visit coming soon with Joe Biden. He's coming to Israel. Are you happy that he's coming?
Anytime a U.S. president is coming to Israel, it's always a time to rejoice on the relationship between the United States and Israel. So, yes, we are happy that the president is coming.
There's a number of presidents that have been to Israel, hasn't there?
Yes, but again, the relationship between the United States and Israel is an unprecedented relationship in the world, especially coming from the former U.S. presidency, that we saw an amazing support for Israel. This visit is a little different in the sense that we don't have the U.S. administration taking into consideration all the issues that we see vis-a-vis Iran. And this goes back to another former president, President Barack Obama, who felt like it's okay to concede on certain issues with Iran, even though it would put Israel in a very bad situation. We see that this particular president is following in the footsteps of that, and therefore, this is one of the issues that probably is going to be dominating the visit. So our suggestion always on the Israeli side is Iran poses a nuclear threat against Israel, that Iran gives money to terrorist groups to go ahead and harm Israeli citizens, both Jewish and non-Jewish. 20% of our citizens are Arab, and 19% of that 20% are Muslim. So attack on Israel is an attack on all its citizens. So any concession to Iran, in essence, is giving an okay approval. What Iran's real plan is for Israel is that they don't want Israel around.
Do you think they don't understand or they don't care?
I think in the global politics of the United States, it's the question of what's best of the interest of the United States and what it means to be on a global stage, on how U.S. politics is playing out currently on the global stage. So right now, they want to be a little bit more in the favor of certain Muslim countries that don't have a really great agenda with the state of Israel.
Of course, Donald Trump was very against the Iran nuclear deal and pulled out of the deal.
Yeah, and we would agree that the U.S. President Trump made a very good decision on that. We felt we had a very good friend in Trump. At the end of the day, Trump was the person, along with the Christian world, that moved the embassy to Jerusalem, that said Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish people. This particular president, not sure where he really stands on Jerusalem. Is it as it was before with the previous president? I don't see that right now. I see that they're trying to advocate something that the Oslo Accords never came to fruition. A two-state solution, either with, what do we mean by a two-state solution right now? When you have Hamas ruling Gaza, you have the Palestinian Authority, a weakened Palestinian Authority ruling the West Bank. You have three players in the region right now. How are you going to get a two-state solution when Hamas and the Palestinian Authority don't get together? So, a two-state solution only works if the Palestinian government governs and doesn't play it as an organization trying to do propaganda for their people to continue to look at us as just a thorn in their side and trying to eradicate our presence from the country.
Do you think the two-state solution is dead?
I think a two-state solution right now is dead.
Yeah.
Yes, because you don't have the necessary leaders who are willing to make the sacrifices possible to govern. This is, I think, the issue at the end of the day. I think Israelis, since Oslo, has educated its own citizens in looking at the Palestinians as the deserving of their own state, that we have trained our own citizens to have peace. Yes, there are people, obviously, in every government or any type of body of citizens not agreeing with that, but the majority of Israelis, if they know their security is okay, we're okay with a two-state solution. It might not be according to the UN Resolution 242, but we understand in Israel there's going to be borders switched over, but you probably get 95% of what the Palestinians want out of the deal for a two-state solution. But I don't see the Palestinian Authority's head, Mahmoud Abbas, able to go ahead and deliver. And I don't see the head of Hamas going ahead and conceding to a two-state solution because he's against the state of Israel completely. He wants to eradicate the state of Israel.
Was Donald Trump good for Israel?
Donald Trump was 100% good for Israel.
Do you think Biden is good for Israel?
I think Biden right now complicates the issue with us in the global political arena. Here we are, we advanced the Abrahamic Accords. I'm looking forward that Saudi Arabia will have a consulate one day in Israel, and we will have a consulate in Saudi Arabia. The Abrahamic Accords is there. This is all, we all see at the end of the day that even though Arabs at one time were like, oh, we're only going to deal with you if you have a Palestinian state. They realized at the end the Palestinians were given the chance and blew it on many occasions to have a state. And they realized that Israel is a superpower in this region, and they want to work with us to advance the necessary things of economic cooperation and diplomatic relations.
Of course, Donald Trump, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, which was a promise, and he fulfilled that promise. He recognized the Golan Heights, and he brought peace, a normalization with other countries as well. So he was very, very popular in Israel, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was extremely popular in Israel. Unfortunately for the American Jewish community, he wasn't so popular. They didn't celebrate the embassy move as the Israelis did, and because the American Jewish community unfortunately couldn't divide an issue that they were on for so many years to move the embassy because of the persona. And like, you have to divide between the persona and the office. And the office of the U.S. president made a decision. It was under Trump. It was a good decision. Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish people. That's it. And the Golan is part of the state of Israel.
What do Israelis feel about Biden?
Because we're not sure where Biden is really going to end up with Iran, we're a little hesitant to see, because at the end of the day, we're fearful of a nuclear-armed Iran and how they will use that in their hatred towards Israel. So we already experience it through Hamas and some other terrorist cells that we have to deal with on our own borders. Why would I want a nuclear-armed Iran?
Do you think Israel's actually going to just go it alone and go into Iran and deal with the nuclear situation?
So you're asking me to predict the future of an Israeli governing coalition that we just dismantled a few days ago on how to move forward despite whatever U.S. president is going to say on the issue of Iran. What I've seen so far from the past governing coalition is that I don't know how many stories are true or not true, but we are taking care of certain things that we feel is a threat from Iran. I think we will continue to do so. My hope is that right now, the current Prime Minister, Yair Lapid, before we have our election process, will go ahead and continue to do what's necessary to defend Israel, even if it means sometimes not agreeing with our U.S. partner.
Of course, Israel's in a bit of a weird time at the moment, isn't it? Because this will be the fifth elections that you're about to go to, and you've just lost Naftali Bennett, and you've got Yair Lapid sitting there until the elections happen in November. So you're in a bit of a middle ground. You don't really quite know where you are as a nation.
Yeah, but we've been this before, because we had a former Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who wasn't governing as he should have towards the end of his prime ministership. We didn't have budgets, yet the defense still continues, because the defense of Israel through the Israel Defense Forces have always maintained the security of Israel. That will always continue. And although Yair Lapid, our prime minister today, on certain issues is on the left of politics, when it comes to the security of Israel, he's on the right.
Netanyahu was very strong against Iran. Do you see him coming back in the future?
So I will say this: Benjamin Netanyahu is probably much better than Bill Clinton when we talk about the comeback kid. So I see that if Benjamin Netanyahu continues to lead Likud as the party, then I do see Benjamin Netanyahu coming back. I don't know if that's necessarily good for the state of Israel. As much as I appreciate what the Prime Minister has done, Benjamin Netanyahu has done in the past, but because of all the things he's involved in here legally, it has prevented him to really govern to the best of the interest of the state, not the interest of him. And what we need is the best interest of the state.
What's your prayer and what's your hope to see from Biden?
We pray that the President of the United States opens his heart to understand truly what's at stake with a nuclear-armed Iran, and that he shouldn't concede in any way, shape, or form to Iran.
Okay, David, thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.